thing I'm going to do is, I believe, I'm going to build on this background over here. And you can hear that clanging noise. That is, those are my water glasses banging together. I like a darker background on some of this, a little bit more dramatic background. So what I did is I did a mixture of Prussian blue over here. And also, I'm going to try and show you this, some sap green into that Prussian blue. I threw some alizarin crimson in there. I'm not sure I like it, but let's just leave it. And this runny stuff over here is Prussian blue and alizarin crimson. All right, I don't know which ones I'm going to do first. And I'm also going to keep my favorite tool, which are these tissues in my hand, because I do a lot of lifting and manipulating as I work on stuff. And I must have spent a fortune on tissues in my painting lifetime. You know, supplies. Prices keep going up. They don't never seem to go down. I don't understand it, but we do. All right, the paper is dry. What I'm doing is I am moistening. Some people call it wetting, but then I find people in my class wet it to the point that it's soaked. Now that's something a lot of artists do. They like to wet the paper completely beforehand. I'm not one of those artists. I'm trying to show you how we can do this and have a little bit control over watercolor. All right, let's see. Let's put in some of this dark back here. Not too much dark, I think. I personally like to mix on paper. I'm not a big one for mixing on the palette. It happens. I do it sometimes. I find my colors are much more brilliant if I put them in on paper like I'm doing now. Why am I choosing this dark, dark color palette? Well, maybe this particular flower is against a very dark wooded setting. I find, and everybody's different, that making up backstories about your work helps you connect to your work. What is this? Where is this growing? What kind of flower is it? I can't answer that because I really don't know. And you notice I'm bringing in some of this darker purple-ish mixture over here because I want to keep it the foreground dark. And again, I'm working on dry paper. My brush is fairly wet, almost too wet, and every once in a while I'll dab over. I work very quickly, and that's because I want to keep the colors fresh and alive, and I'm working around these individual blossoms. It's good to know your color theory also if you're going to be expanding your palette, to know what works, what doesn't work, what colors are too muddy. There's nothing wrong with mud on a painting. Let's concentrate on this just a little bit here, because those dark values add drama to your painting. Not always applicable. I'm not going to have to do some lifting there, I think, but just a beautiful way of looking at color instead of always having those bright, bright mixes. All right, I'm keeping up with this purplish mix down here. It's almost, oh gosh, the color of grapes, I would say. Throwing some green in here. Again, the paper is dry, but my palette is damp. My brush is damp. Remember, with watercolor, you have to have water. I have so many people in my classes that think it's kind of like working with acrylic, and it is not. You need, or oil for that matter, you need that water. You need that medium of water to mix it around. And if you just let it go, it'll create some wonderful effects. I did sign it before. I'm obliterating my signature somewhat. Oh, don't worry, I can always re-sign it. The ego never sleeps. Got one half done. So we're going to have to move pretty quickly here because we want to match this area over here. And looks like I had a lot more green going up here. But I think I'm going to keep it kind of dark, working around the light blossoms. And I might just start throwing in that alizarin crimson mix with the Prussian blue up here. Now, I like to work with a limited color palette, meaning, yes, I have a limited amount of colors on my palette, that's true, but also when I'm working with a painting, I like to keep the same colors going in that painting. I have a little bit of color that's run into the blossoms. I'm not worried about it. So the colors in the blossom itself are purples and greens and almost burgundies here and there. And as I work with this, I see that these colors are actually mimicking in the colors that I chose to do for my background. And I'm painting around these blossoms, these little blossoms over here. I got a lot of drips. And one thing you can do with drips is do that. Kind of lift it a little bit. Now this is not going to be perfect. I have what I call blossoms, blossoms on my paper, which I'll show you momentarily, but I want to get this color down here. And I don't wet the paper often enough. See, that's my problem. I tend to work on dry paper. See, we all have little issues that we work with when we're painting. No one is perfect. Everybody's got their own little quirks that they feel they need to work on. And when the paper's wet, I get beautiful effects, and I don't wet my paper enough for that. And I'm still working with that green and that Prussian blue. I'm really not paying attention to how the colors are going. I tend to be more of a, oh gosh, semi-realistic abstract artist. Does that make sense? Well, it does to me. Okay. Moving along here. And I let the colors just blend. Sometimes I'll drop stuff in. Right now it's falling down. I don't know if I like that, but that's where it is. And this is not a masterpiece. This is an exercise. And gosh, can I fix this? Can I make it stronger? Can I make it better? What did I do that I didn't like and that I might be able to correct? And yeah, you can correct watercolor. It doesn't necessarily become a medium that is stagnant and doesn't correct. You can do a lot more with it once you learn the basics, once you learn how to control it. I don't. Too much green on top of green over here. Let's throw some of that Prussian in here. When you work with watercolor, always remember it's going to dry 20% lighter. Now, I don't like math. I've never liked math. Never liked percentages. So I can't tell you what that means. To me, it means it's going to dry a lot. No, maybe not a lot, but somewhat lighter than what I put down. And I have to keep that in mind. I have these little drips. So what I do is I take, sorry about that, take my brush, put it against my tissue, and make a thirsty brush. And that thirsty brush will lift those drips and also move them around here. Let's get some green down here. And some more Prussian blue. This might not be to your color choice, but like I said, I like some drama in my stuff. And again, damp brush, maybe move it around on the paper, maybe pull it here and there. And it starts getting an abstract feel to it. Let's get some more of this purple in here. And carefully, if I can, outline the original stem. Let it go into infinity like that. Then we're going to throw some of that alizarin crimson. in there and just put some water down here. Oop, looks like we got a spot right there. Okay. Not exactly happy with what I just did there, so we'll try to camouflage it. But I don't think that's going to work. Oh well. Smooth it out, feather it out a little bit with again, taking the brush, cleaning it, or dabbing the water out of it and making it a thirsty brush. Do we want a little more red in here? Let's make that brush unthirsty. Let's moisten it a little bit. That's already looking like it has some presence. It might be too dramatic. So I think what we need to do, and I have a little bit of a purplish mixture here, we need to start looking at areas that might need to pop just a little bit, not cover them completely. And here's my thirsty brush, picking up these dabs. All right, we're going to let this set and see how it looks, and then start emphasizing this particular part over here. Now that we have this background done, and I think I'm going to just leave this background like it is, it's diffused. This flower could be in the middle of a garden, in the middle of a forest. It really doesn't matter. It has more of a mood and more of a background. And down here you'll see these things. People call them cauliflowers. They call them blooms. They don't bother me. This is a very loose impressionistic painting. So it has a few marks like this. I don't think it takes away from the excitement and the immediacy of the watercolor. Watercolor is a very vibrant, live medium, and I like to keep things like this in here unless I'm doing a very detailed thing like a portrait or a commission for someone. I like my stuff loose. Keep the blooms in, keep the blossoms in, keep the mixes in. It makes it interesting. What we're going to do also right now is we're going to build just a little bit on some of these washes, and I have my tissues right here, over here, and just pump things up a bit. I'm using a mixture of alizarin crimson and some ultramarine blue, and I'm just going to tippy toe. It's too damp. And take my brush, tap it a little bit, and I'm going to put in just dabs of color. Again, my brush is way, way, way too damp. You can see those puddles of color. I don't particularly like that for this, so let's go ahead and we can dampen it and then charge our color in there. Or we can pull the color through like that. I don't like these blooms, these blossoms right here, but I'm going to deal with it. It's okay, because this is playing around. My paper is dry. Let's see what happens if I dampen it. Here's a spot here. Here's a passage where I'll dampen it. And I'm going to throw in the color. And again, I'm going to let it bloom and work. No, I shouldn't say bloom. I should say mix on its own on the paper. Dabbing some red in there. Some alizarin crimson is what I'm using. I rarely use red. I don't particularly care for red in the type of work I do. It's a very intense cadmium red, so I prefer to use the alizarin crimson, and I use it a lot. Now we don't want to do too much dark work because we're going to obliterate some of these washes. I don't want to do that. I like how the red pops here and there. I think that adds a lot to it. And we've got some drips here, and again, remember this is loose, impressionistic, vibrant, alive. We don't want to make a still life look like it, oh gosh, it's too still. That's why I don't really do a lot of still lives. Somebody should tell me, is it lives or lives? Because I feel they're kind of dull. I'm going to go in here too, and I'm going to put in some more green. Could this be a hydrangea? I don't know. You guys tell me, what do you think? What kind of flower is this? Or is this a flower just out of my imagination? Which will happen? Now, if I took the green and I blended it in with the purple. I might get a dull neutral, but it might work there because I'm kind of pulling in some more of this green. I'm also leaving some more white and maybe throwing in a lot of, not a lot, I'm sorry, a little bit of a darker green here and there also, where I've dampened the paper with that lighter green, just to get more values. What are values? Values are darks and lights in a painting. Without values, everything looks flat. You need the light and the dark to see things. And that kind of applies to a whole lot of things, I think, in life. When you paint, you, I think, learn more about life, nature. I tell my students, I teach watercolor classes at the local art center here, and I tell my students to really look at the buildings, look at the trees. We're not taught to look anymore because we're busy. You know, we have a lot of things going on. We have social media. I don't want to do too much with this, but I just want to emphasize some of these colors. I don't want to cover, see how the white is over here? I don't want to cover that up. And I want to pull some of these drips. I'll tell you what my big problem is, and all artists have issues that they struggle with. I tend to go crazy. And I go, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, I'll cover this up, I'll cover that up. And before I know it, I've covered everything. Which is not the point of this. We don't want to cover everything. We want to just kind of emphasize and do some washes and work with what we've got here. We don't have to change everything around. And I have to remember, too, to sit back and take a look at it. I have a lot of cool colors there. And then as it dries, and I'm still using a number 10 round. It's not a very expensive, but it's a good synthetic brush. And I'm happy. Princeton is not a sponsor. I do not have any sponsors. I choose what I want to talk about, not because my sponsor tells me and what I want to show you. But Princeton does a good job on their brushes. I'm dabbing that red, kind of taking it. See how it's like splayed over there? I'm just dabbing it on. It's got a little bit more presence to it now. It's popping a bit more. I'm going to do the same thing with some blue here. Not a lot. And this is where I have to sit back and go, all right, Chris, what are you doing? Are you overworking this? Which I will do. Sometimes I'll do something and I will not like it, and then I'll look at it week, 2 weeks, sometimes a year or two later and go, oh, that's not too awfully bad. I have no point of reference here. I am working blind. So I can make up anything I want to do. I'm going to stop for now, and next thing I want to do, let's see. Well, where would you go from here if you were adding more washes, if you wanted to build on this without overworking it? That's tricky, isn't it? You need to do some work here. And I'm trying to think of what other color I want to bring in here, and I can't decide quite yet. I'm going to work on the stem, these leaves. I think I want to do throw in some, let's see, burnt sienna. Now, burnt sienna, you think of burnt sienna as brown. Actually, burnt sienna is a red, and it mixes nicely with green. Now, I make no promises on this. I have my palette here. I've got some burnt sienna on the palette, and I'm trying to keep it clean away from too much of my green here. I have the green mixture also of ultramarine blue and sap green, which is a nice dark green. Somehow not looking green enough for me, or dark enough, I should say. Maybe doing that. You can see my palette is pretty dirty over here, but we're going to hold on to those darks. I think we can get something out of them. I've switched to a number 8, and what I'm going to do, I'm not going to worry about cleaning this up. I'm going to moisten this stem. And then I'm going to go in and put a dark mixture under here of ultramarine blue and sap green. And as it moves down the stem, I'm just going to go with sap green. And remember, this is moistened. And then I'm going to dot in here and there some burnt sienna. Not sure if that's the effect I want, but that's what we're working with. And on these leaves, I'm going to do a mix of lemon yellow and sap green. I think my paint's drying. Every once in a while you have to kind of spray those wells. And if you want to spray your palette too, but not too much because it'll dilute it. Remember, with watercolor, the more you spray water, the more you add water, the more diluted that color will be. And the reason I'm putting this yellow in here is it brightens it up a little bit. Also, yellow and purple are complementary colors. We'll see how they work together. Some sap green, a darker variation. I did not, I might have, should have, could have, but I didn't moisten the paper there. I have no idea what the leaves for this flower look like. Oops, don't want to put my hand in there. So we're just hoping we get this right. Do I want to dab a little bit maybe of some burnt sienna here and there, just to dab it, maybe pull it into the greens and the yellows. If you notice, maybe not at the florist, but in nature, nothing is perfect. Everything has a little bit of its own thing going. Not that it's going bad, but it's not a perfect green. Might have a little bit of brown here and there. And what I have here is a lot of color running down. And we're going to go ahead and just do that. And I'm going into the masking tape here. Do I like it? Meh, maybe. I'm pretty hard on myself sometimes. Oh, okay. I don't know what that noise is. It's channeling other artists going, slow down. Another thing is that I do, and it's good to be fast, but there is also something to be said for slow painting. I don't know if I want to do anything else with that. Now, I had a thought. What if I took some of my phthalo blue? People call it peacock blue. The technical name is phthalo. What if I threw some of this nice, it's a warm blue. What if I pulled some of that phthalo in there and dabbed it here and there? Whoops. Dab, Chris. I did not do too good on the dabbing. Just do a wash here and there. Once that your watercolor dries, you can do washes over it. Typically in watercolor, we work light to dark. I don't want to overdo this phthalo. It's a beautiful, beautiful peacock color, a blue-green, the color of the Caribbean waters. All right, I might want to leave that poor plant alone. Is there anything I can do with this? I don't know. I'm going to soften all this. How about we do that? Just looked a little bit too harsh for my taste. What if we pulled, well, this is a what if, What if we pulled some of that phthalo in through here and there, to kind of pop this a little bit. Now I'm not sure I'm going to like it, so I have my handy tissues right here, and you probably can't see this because I'm not being very generous with the phthalo. I wasn't sure I was going to like it. And again, the paper is dry, and you have to always make sure your paper is dry. Let's see. I think I just threw some ultramarine in there, but it's not going to kill us. Nothing will kill us here. I'm liking this phthalo actually up here. Kind of moistening it. You can see I'm dropping water here and there. It lightens it up a little bit, this background. I'm really holding my brush very, very lightly. I'm holding it by the edge. I find if you hold your brush tight like this, you're tight. You need to be loose. You need to be relaxed. You know, sometimes you need to have that control when you're doing a lot of detail work. But my goodness, when you're just playing around with something like this, relax, let it flow. If you look at some of the great artists, living and dead, they let their work flow. There we go. This is all adding that phthalo blue. Remember, it's going to dry lighter. Working around here. It's going to dry 20% lighter. I say a little lighter. Let's be realistic. How many of us can go in and measure 20% unless we work with color professionally or we're an engineer? If you can do it, leave it in the comments and tell me how you measure 20% lighter. Oh, I know there are value tables, blah, blah, blah. I know value tables are important. I'm not making fun of value tables, but if you know how to measure 20% lighter from when the watercolor goes in to when it dries, please tell me, because I don't know how to do it. I add some more phthalo on the other side so we have balance, trying not to get into those wet spaces because I know what's going to happen. I'm going to have blossoms. Blossoms, cauliflowers, blooms. Oh my goodness, you know, it's a flower. Let's put some blooms in. Just kidding. More phthalo. And notice how it just, and when you do washes, it just adds depth. It adds contrast. It's just lovely, lovely. Sometimes I'll intentionally leave light spaces so I can put a wash underneath. Okay, I think we better stop because in my typical fashion, I'm going to overwork it. So do we know when to stop? Now we're stopping. So this is how we took a very plain, ordinary painting. It wasn't that great. It's kind of light, like an exercise in watercolor, and kind of popped it more by increasing the background here with a mixture of Prussian blue and sap green and a little bit of alizarin crimson, and then we also added some phthalo blue after that dried to kind of pop it more, and we built on the flowers here. We added values here and there. We added alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue to make purples. Just use the alizarin crimson by itself here and there. Use the ultramarine blue by itself here and there, and also kind of built a little bit on these greens here and there, and just did a little bit of work on the leaves because we don't want to do too much because the star of the show is right here, this big blossom with multicolored little tiny blooms on it. I hope this has helped you with your work. I hope you learned a little bit about putting washes on watercolors that might not be as good as you would like them. By adding washes, you can build on them and add more drama and more value. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. I usually put videos up every 1 or 2 weeks. Sometimes I get 3 in a month if I'm not too busy. And I hope this has helped you with your art. Thank you so much for watching, and have a creative week.